The wagon creaked across the endless stretch of dry land, its wheels grinding over stones as the sun dipped low behind the hills. Inside, a girl sat chained, wrists bruised, face blank as dust clung to her hair. She didn't speak. She hadn't since they'd taken her from the saloon cellar 2 towns back, sold her like a mule. The man driving the wagon spit tobacco, not bothering to hide his disgust. To him, she wasn't a person, just another transaction on a long list of bad deals. When the wagon stopped at the edge of a lonely ranch fenced with weathered posts, a tall man stepped forward from the porch. His name was Eli Graves, a rancher with a face carved by loss and eyes that spoke of years spent watching everything he loved turn to dust. He counted the coins into the trader's palm without a word. The man sneered, "You paid for her, rancher. She's yours now." Eli didn't answer. He just stared at the girl sitting motionless in the wagon, her eyes sunken and empty as if she'd already left this world. When the wagon rolled away, Eli stood in silence for a long moment before untying her hands. "You're safe now," he said, his voice rough, unsure if he believed it himself. The girl flinched when he reached toward her. She couldn't tell whether he was another monster wearing a kind man's mask. "What's your name?" he asked, but she said nothing, her lips too dry to move. He sighed and pointed toward the barn. "There's water inside, food too. Go on." She hesitated, then followed him, her steps slow and unsteady, bare feet leaving faint prints in the dirt. Inside the barn, Eli lit a lantern. Its flickering light danced across the walls, revealing scars of old labor, tools, and hay stacked in the corner. The girl stared at the floor. He handed her a folded blanket. "You can stay here till you figure where you want to go." She clutched the fabric to her chest like it was gold. That night, she sat by the small fire he built, eating bread and stew. She didn't thank him. She didn't need to. The way she ate told him everything. Hunger that deep didn't belong to the living. It belonged to survivors. Eli didn't sleep that night. He stood outside, watching the barn, the wind tugging at his coat. He told himself he'd done a good thing, that paying for her was an act of mercy, not ownership. But in a land where money meant control, he couldn't shake the thought that she might never believe him. The next morning, she appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair wet from the well, wearing a torn dress he'd left out. "You can eat," he said, nodding toward the table. She nodded once, barely meeting his eyes. "Clara," she said suddenly, voice fragile as glass. "My name's Clara." It was the first time he heard her speak. Days turned to weeks. Clara moved around the ranch quietly, helping with chores, mending what she could. She didn't talk much, but her silence was no longer fear. It was survival. Eli noticed the way. Her hands trembled whenever a man's voice echoed from the road, or how she froze whenever thunder rolled in from the hills. Whatever had happened to her before that wagon, it lived under her skin like a ghost refusing to rest. He didn't push her. Some wounds, he knew, only healed when left alone. One evening he found her in the corral, feeding the horses. The sunset painted her face in gold and red. For a moment, she almost looked free. "You shouldn't be out here alone this late," he said. She didn't turn around. "You think I'm scared of the dark?" "I think you've seen worse," he said softly. She looked at him then, really looked. For the first time, he saw a flicker of strength in her eyes. "You don't know what they did to me," she whispered. Eli stepped closer but stopped short, respecting the invisible line between them. "I don't have to," he said. "I just know you're still here. That counts for something." That night, a storm broke over the ranch. The wind howled, rattling the windows, and the sky flashed with white fire. Eli woke a scream from the barn. He ran out, boots sinking in the mud, and found Clara curled in a corner, trembling, her hands over her ears. "It's just thunder," he said, kneeling beside her. She shook her head violently. "No, they used thunder to cover the sound." Eli didn't ask who they were. He just sat down beside her and pulled his coat around her shoulders. "You're safe now," he whispered again, though he knew safety was something no one could promise. When the storm passed, she fell asleep against his shoulder, exhausted. He stayed awake, staring into the dim lantern light, wondering what kind of man he'd become. The kind who bought a broken soul just to save it, or the kind who was fooling himself into thinking he could fix what wasn't his to fix. By morning, Clara was gone from the barn, but not from the ranch. He found her in the fields, her hair loose, eyes clear, hands steady. "You don't owe me anything," he said quietly. She looked at him, the faintest smile crossing her lips. "You paid for me," she said. "Now do it." He frowned. "Do what?" "Set me free." Her words hit him harder than any bullet. Freedom in this land meant danger. Out there, men like the ones who'd hurt her still waited, still hunted. "You can stay," he said after a moment. You don't have to run again. She stepped closer, her voice steady. If I stay here, I'm still bought. You're not like them, Eli. But you still hold the key. He looked away, jaw tight. And if I let you go? Then maybe I'll finally belong to myself. He didn't stop her. He saddled the mare and handed her the reins. The sun rose behind her as she rode out, dust trailing in gold behind the hooves. Eli stood at the gate, hat in hand, watching her fade into the horizon. For the first time in years, the ranch felt empty, not because she was gone, but because she'd taken with her the last piece of what made him feel human. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this wasn't the end. The world had a cruel way of bringing lost souls back, together, especially when redemption was still owed. The morning Clara rode away, Eli thought he'd seen the last of her, but fate in the wild. West was a cruel storyteller. It never ended a chapter without twisting. The knife first. For weeks he worked alone, mending fences and keeping the herd alive. Though his mind was never at peace, every sound of a distant rider made him look up, hoping it was her. It never was. Then one evening, as the wind carried the smell of smoke and gunpowder from the east, a rider appeared on the horizon. The horse was lathered, the rider slumped. Eli ran out as she dismounted and nearly collapsed into his arms. It was Clara, her face cut, her dress torn, breath ragged. They found me, she whispered before fainting. Eli carried her inside and tended her wounds through the night. When she woke, her voice was weak but clear. It was them, the men from the pen, the ones who sold me. His hands tightened into fists. You shouldn't have gone alone. I had to, she said softly. I needed to end it. Her eyes, once empty, now burned with a quiet fire. They took everything from me. Eli, I went back to take it back. He nodded slowly, knowing that revenge in this land was a poison that didn't just kill the guilty, it killed the soul of whoever drank it. But some poisons, he thought, were worth taking. 2 days later, he saddled his horse. Clara tried to rise but winced from the pain. You can't go alone, she said. Then come, he replied simply. She did. They rode east toward the burned-out saloon where her past had begun. The town was dying, its streets empty except for the ghosts of bad men and worse memories. When they reached the saloon, Eli pushed the doors open, his revolver drawn. Inside, 3 men sat at a table. One of them, the leader, stood up, eyes wide. Well, look who it is, he said, smirking at Clara. Didn't think you'd crawl back here. His grin faded when Eli stepped forward. She didn't crawl, Eli said quietly. She came to bury you. The man reached for his gun, but Eli was faster. The first shot shattered a bottle behind him. The second tore through his shoulder. The others scattered, one firing blindly as glass exploded around them. Clara grabbed a fallen pistol and aimed with trembling hands. When the leader lunged toward her, she pulled the trigger. The sound echoed like judgment. He fell to the floor, blood seeping into the dust. Clara stood over him, shaking, tears cutting lines down her dirty face. It's done, Eli said. No, she whispered. It's just begun. They buried him outside town. She didn't cry, she just stared at the fresh mound of dirt, like it held every memory she wanted to forget. On the way back, they rode in silence. When they reached the ranch, she walked ahead, stopping by the same tree where they first met months ago. You saved me once, she said without turning around. But I didn't understand why. Eli took off his hat, the wind tugging at his hair. Because I saw myself in you, a person who's lost everything. She looked back. At him, eyes glassy but strong. You paid for me, Eli. You bought me out of hell. But I think it's my turn to pay you back. He frowned. I never asked for that. I know, she said. That's why I'm doing it. That night, the ranch was quiet. Too quiet. Near midnight, the sound of hooves thundered from the ridge. A group of riders approached, men, wearing the same insignia as the one Clara had killed. The rest of the gang had come. Eli grabbed his rifle. Clara followed, jaw set. You should run, he told her. Not again, she said. I'm done running. The first shot came from the dark. Eli fired back, the blast lighting up the yard.